Welcome to the Carpool Chat. From our house to the State House, the commute that nobody ran for. I'm Representative Sarah Stalker, and I'm joined today by Representative Rachel Roarx and Representative Tina Bojanowski. We are three Louisville legislators that frequently carpool from Louisville to Frankfort, and we thought it would be fun to include you in on some of the conversations that we have. That being said, I want to jump right into something that we acknowledged this week, is that we have these kind of reoccurring themes about our personality that are a direct line from our childhood. And I don't know what we were talking about, but I remember telling Rachel, you know, there was two incidents when I was younger, and it was about, helping others without. And so when I was really young, I remember watching this 2020 special. So I had to be like under 7 because I was at our old house. And it was just telling this really horrible story about all these kids from around the world who just like had nothing, right? And then I remember at intermission, why was I watching 2020 at age 7? I don't know, but that's, or younger, who knows? But that's what the program was that was on. And I remember my mom asking, this was close to Christmas, and I remember her saying, so what do you want for Christmas this year? And I was so horrified by that question after seeing this whole like expose on these kids that I was just like, I don't want anything. And she understood why, and I think I made a comment directly correlating to what we just saw. I was like, can we get these kids something? And then as I got older, our family did something like a secret Santa, right? Which a lot of families will do to feel like they don't need to buy presents for everybody. And I think I must have been 8th grade, maybe 9th grade, and I was like, why? We don't need anything, right? Why don't we just adopt an angel from the angel tree? Like, why don't we all go in collaboratively and spend our $20 limit or whatever it was? And nobody was down for that. And I was talking to Rachel, and she had said, yeah, that's very much like who you still are today. So I recognize that's a characteristic about myself. Tina, what is it that you recognize is still very...
So we had this conversation, and I really thought long and hard. And my father was an alcoholic. And so I'm what you call an adult child of an alcoholic. And a lot of the ways that I live my life stem from my childhood in a dysfunctional family. And so, sometimes as a child, you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to make things more difficult than they already are with a dad who's an alcoholic. So, I became very much trying to be a perfectionist and not to make mistakes, not to, to do really well at school. And I think sometimes that's something I carry forward to today. So I'm not just going to understand the budget, I'm going to create my own kind of document of the budget, and I'm going to create a spreadsheet on figuring out how the triggers work. Those are the kind of things that I think may or may not be healthy for me, but they're something from my childhood that happen now in my adult life.
Right. And you're definitely very well known for really taking a lot of that ownership and leading on those things, because not many people would go as far as you would to really understand something in that way. And so we all reap the benefits of that. But we also, that's a good reminder for us as friends to then also make sure that you're taking care of yourself too.
So on the positive side, I did start seeing a counselor a couple years back while we were in session, and trying to save the world with taking care of myself. So I have some great strategies for taking care of myself, and I try to be very consciously doing that as often as I can.
That's really good advice, especially for people who are watching, just to know that as you're taking on really hard things, you have to find that balance.
Society today, I mean, the world we live in, there's a lot to handle. And so, it's kind of that you have to put on your own mask before you help someone else. So
we're definitely not short on issues. That's
so true.
That's for sure.
Right.
Rachel, what was it that came up for you that you identified?
Well, it's no secret that my mother used to really like to call me Baby Rachel, because I'm the youngest of 3. And so for me, I remember looking at her and just saying, I don't ever need to leave my South End community to help people. I will always have plenty of need right here in my own backyard. I don't need to go out of state for college. I don't need to travel the world to find what my calling is. It's right here in my own backyard. And I kind of also accepted that maybe in 3 generations, everyone would forget who I was anyway. And that's scary to some people, but I don't mind it. I think that's it's comforting to know that, yes, we make ourselves out to be such really big deals, but at the end of the day, like your family and people that are around you matter, and but like try to leave the world a little bit of a better place than than you found it. So for me, I think it's very symbolic of the work that I do now, because I was like, well, like the South End is always going to be my pride and joy, and is the area that I want to help and serve.
Yeah. I love that you had, like, that you knew that just even as a young child, because I remember as I got older, I was thinking, like, I need to leave. I don't know why I felt like I needed to leave. I don't know if I felt like that was, like, a different sign of like growth or success, like, oh, she's out of state now, she's doing, and I was gone for a while trying to pursue other things, but then coming back felt really good. Yeah. And I don't know that I have a desire to really ever leave again.
Right.
So for what it's worth, well, I think those very much influence and shape the way that we show up, obviously, in our jobs. Tina's very persistent. I decided to run for this because I'm like, I genuinely want to help people.
Right.
And you have what we like to call positive, what is
optimism. Well, I call it blind optimism.
You call it blind optimism.
Blind optimism, or just like this belief that everything was going to work out, and that like find the good in things.
Yeah.
So,
and you're here for it, and you're
yes.
like, I will be here until it gets done. All right, well, let's jump right into some policies that we want to discuss. I know we have a couple of bills that we're going to focus on that are pretty lengthy. So let's talk first. Rachel, do you want to dive into 485,
yes.
House Bill 485, and tell folks what that's about and your feelings around it?
Right, so this is a bill, House Bill 485. We passed the House floor this week, and so we passed it from the House floor this week. And so essentially what it does, it deals with 202A and 202C. So what that means is these are it's a topic around mental health, and when is it appropriate to involuntarily commit someone into a mental health institution. And so what we saw in the 70s was kind of the shift away from institutionalization and really trying to reintegrate people into community. Now, a lot of times what we see in public policy is that kind of a pendulum will swing when one direction, and maybe we go too far in one direction. We kind of have to, at some point, realize there might be a better middle balance. And so that's what this bill really is. A lot of folks come to the table to talk about what is that balance between someone's autonomy and also making sure that they're getting checked on and being involved in a court process, and also getting help from a mental health institution. So 202A relates to involuntary commitment and adds some guardrails to it. And then 202C relates to violent crime. Somebody who might have been mentally incapacitated or incompetent in some way, and they commit a violent crime, they are violent. And so what we see a lot of times is like family members being like, hey, I can't control this person, and they are becoming violent towards me. I want to help them, but they also have decision-making capacity to some extent, but they're making poor decisions with that in terms of self-harm and harming others. And so when it comes to that, we really do have to take that seriously. And so there was a lot of things and a lot of people falling through the cracks. And so this bill comes to address that, and again puts in more guardrails. So it's something that I actually had a constituent call me about in my first year to talk about the experience that she had with her daughter. And it was a subject that I was like, it's a really hard balance. People are starting to have conversations, and I hope that we can come to some type of resolution. So I'm looking forward to getting to follow up with her and saying, like, we're moving the needle, and I think what is the right direction.
Was there any pushback against the bill?
I don't believe so. But I think it was, and that really, I think, was a testament to how many folks got involved.
How the process really was done the right way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks are going to benefit. I would dare to say that probably all 100 members just in the House alone probably know someone or know of someone who knows someone, right, who this would benefit. I know I took a communication from somebody who's not my constituent, but a close friend of our family, and they were asking for this type of advice, right? Had a grown child who was really struggling with mental health and being homeless, right? And it was just such a crisis for so many people, and you want to help that family member. But there's so many things to kind of juggle and balance at the same time.
And I think that is another important note, is that a lot of these folks who experience this, they end up with mental illness, they end up on our streets, they end up homeless because their family has tried to get them help, but then they have denied it. And so a lot of times what I remind folks is, it's not compassion for us to leave someone with a severe medical issue like a colostomy bag, who actively needs medical attention, who refuses it, who is actively dying on the street, to not get them the care that they need and to make sure that they actually do get better. That's not compassion. And so to actually have a bill that is going to make sure that those folks that are in those situations are getting the help that they need is really important. And again, that's a balance. Those are really hard conversations, but it was really frustrating to watch a lot of folks languish and for them to almost be like their own worst enemy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this will do good things. I'm really curious to see how this plays out and affects families' lives. All right, let's jump to another really big bill that is not new in being out, but it's getting a lot of buzz since it's been out. So this is House Bill 500, which is known as our budget bill. And we were told at the beginning of this process when it was put out that this was a bare bones budget. And so we're still trying to learn exactly what that means and look to see what is not included and how those decisions will be made forward, moving forward. But one thing that was very clear to people is that there was a major change in the health insurance cap for state employees. So that would be individuals such as ourselves, our teachers, our bus drivers, people, anybody who works in
all
a state
employees.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Tina?
So the language in the bill says that, so health insurance across the nation is going up in price. And our state employee insurance really didn't get more expensive for us this year, even though the pricing went up. It was absorbed by the state. So what this language does in House Bill 500 is it caps the employer, so the general fund appropriation, to a 5% increase in health insurance each year, which leaves lots of money that will either have to be absorbed by the employees in higher premiums or in lower health insurance, more deductibles, less coverage, etc. And this has really, I'd say, triggered, There have been hundreds upon hundreds of people who've emailed me from across the state with concerns. I spoke with one young teacher who said, if this happens, I'm going to have to quit my job and move back in with my parents. There are a lot of people who can't just absorb another $500 a month. And that was
the range, right? It was going
to... Well, the personnel department did give some estimates of how much more it would cost. So lots and lots of pushback about this. So points to remember are the budget bill was filed. It has not yet been heard in a committee. When it gets heard in a committee, it most definitely will have a committee substitute that will have more language, different language. There also were 4 shell bills filed yesterday, and we talked about shell bills last week, and these shell bills have budget language in their title. It's House Bill 672 through House Bill 675, and so it's even possible that they might put the budget language in a different bill altogether, because now House Bill 500 has such a negative public connotation. So I'll be tracking it, trying to watch, exactly what's going to, this is where the detail-oriented person is going to come in handy. Because as soon as we get that sub, I'll be going through all my numbers and looking for that language and then letting the public know either through my newsletter or through Facebook posts, know exactly where they are, at the next point. So what's concerning is, for a state employee, they really took it personally.
As they should.
They really took it personally. It's like, I'm willing to work for less money than I would in the private sector. And I know that I will have certain benefits that make that worth it. In addition to wanting to contribute to society, to be a part of the public process. So lots of worries. And so I'm not saying don't worry, but I am saying we are a long way from a final budget. And so just stay tuned and we will keep you updated.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has never been done before, right, Rachel? Like we've never, to our knowledge, we have never put a cap in a budget bill that has said the employee, state of Kentucky, you can only pay up to this percentage.
I haven't seen it, but I mean that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But I don't think that health insurance has been such a crisis as it is today.
As it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
So combine that with the federal changes in health insurance and potential Medicaid changes, we're going to have a lot of people really struggling when it comes to health. And we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Rachel, are you hearing from folks in your district about this, and what just concerns in general do you have about
Yeah,
it?
I think we knew going into session, especially with all the federal changes, that with this budget year, we as the State House, I mean, that's one of our main jobs is to pass the budget bill. And one of the main challenges that we were going to have is these cuts from the federal level and federal funding and how we're going to make up for it as a state. So I've been talking publicly for months about just like that's a serious thing that we have to tackle. The governor's budget did a lot of things to try to make up for those gaps and fill those gaps. And so it's possible. It's just a question of, are we as the legislative body going to come to those same conclusions, or do we feel that we want to have cuts as a majority of members? Do we feel that that's the way?
Which leads to the driving force would be how much can they spend and still give us the income tax cut that they want to make. Which
probably needs to be explained just a little bit. So that
Right.
we always talk about, are we budgeting towards the income tax and meeting those triggers? One of you want to talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, so the triggers are based on, you kind of just very roughly, you compare your revenues, the state general fund revenues, the state general fund expenditures, actual expenditures, and then there's a buffer, and it's called the ITT, and it is, so 1% of the income tax, what a 1% reduction would be, you need to have that buffer between your expenses and your revenues. And if you meet that buffer, and then in last session in House Bill 775, they created more increments. So you could kind of get to there, or a little bit get to there, and have different decreases in the income tax. I know decreasing income tax is very high on the majority party platform.
Yep.
And so I just will be watching iterations of the budget as far as, do we withhold money that could be spent on public good in order to meet those triggers?
Yeah.
And if I don't know on it, I would just say it does us no good to keep lowering the income tax.
Thank you.
If we're going to nickel and dime everyone to death in healthcare and sales tax. I mean, these are things that are impacting people's lives, if not more.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to just remember that while you might be cutting taxes in one way, it's really just shifting the tax burden in another way.
That's true.
I have not been a proponent of that bill, whatever it is each year, about lowering it since I came in 23, because we need all of that money to go into those three major buckets. So for every dollar that the state brings in as income revenue, 90 cents of every dollar is spent in one of three buckets. So it's either your K through 12, it is your public safety, which is your prisons, your jails, your courthouses, or the third one is the Medicaid and all those social safety net programs like Meals on Wheels. So it's so scary to hear, when folks say, oh, we don't need that, we want you to keep more money in your pocket. But for the average Kentuckian, it is not beneficial for me to have $100 or whatever the amount is for the average Kentuckian in my pocket at the end of the year while you're pickpocketing me out of the other one, and we're losing that.
I figured out my number for 2024, which is the last year I filed my taxes. I think that the income tax break saved me $739. And I would much rather have that go to tax in order to support all
these
the
other
above
programs, that we need. So
Yeah.
it's something to be mindful of. While you think it might be a good idea for somebody to tell you they're going to lower your taxes, you're going to feel the pain someplace else in your community.
Well, and in a lot of local communities, I mean, I serve on the local government committee. What we've seen over the interim session is that a lot of local jurisdictions and leaders are actually they're taking on the tax burden now. And so they're having to increase their taxes, and they don't want to, but they have to, because they have to make up for what the state is then not pulling in or directing towards them.
Yep. So more to come on that. But before we wrap, let me do a callback from last week. We talked briefly about how we feel about Valentine's Day. And I said, I'm not a fan of it, but the one thing that I do enjoy is discounted candy. So I don't know which ones you might like. I think you would like
peanut
those.
butter.
But,
Oh, thank you,
so
Sarah.
I wanted to make sure that you each got a little, candy. I still love you, even though I gave it to you after Valentine's Day. But $1.80 a bag feels so much better.
There
It's
you
probably
go.
like the $7.99 that it was.
It really does.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the conversation this week. And remember, Kentucky's motto is United We Stand. And Tina?
Divided we fall.
That's right. Tune in next week. Thanks.
Today's episode was brought to you by What Would Joshua Do? When you get down and don't know what to do, just ask yourself, what would Joshua Watkins do? Would he guasha in the car? I think he would, and I think that's okay. See you next time.